Thank you for joining us today. We know you could have chosen to be anywhere. You chose to be with us, and we are truly grateful for that. My name is India Mans. I am a board member, immediate past board president, and chair of the 125th Anniversary Committee. As a supporter of the YWCA, I'm often asked about my why, meaning why do I support the YWCA? I quickly respond, why not? How could you not? How could you not support an organization that provides so many critical services in our community? I toured the YWCA in 2014. During that tour, I was introduced to the Nurse Examiner program. From that point, I was hooked. I immediately knew that while I prayed I never needed the program, I took comfort in knowing that a program like this existed for those that did. I always say the tour is the hook, so if you haven't had one, I recommend doing so soon. I am happy to announce that our YWCA celebrates its 125th anniversary this month, and oh, what a journey it's been. The YWCA at large has been a leader of change and transformation since its inception. We still have a lot of work to do, and we hope that you will continue to join us as we celebrate over the next year with many planned activities. Please stay posted to the website to learn more about what we are doing and how you can get involved. Please enjoy as we look back over the last 125 years.
YWCA West Central Michigan is an institution committed to eliminating racism and empowering women. Throughout our history, advancing justice within and outside our organization has been at the core of who we are. For the last 40 years, we've focused on building programs and services around domestic violence and sexual assault, because such violence emerges from the intersection of those first two elements in our mission: racism and sexism. Our focus at the YWCA is to stand at that intersection, to transform lives with expert services for victims, education to end those things that fuel abuse, and public policy that translates our mission into law, all with the help of our generous community. All the way back to the late 1800s, the YWCA has provided space and place for women and marginalized groups. At a time when women were not allowed to go into town without escorts, the YWCA became a haven for women to gather. And in a time when women's access to education was sparse, the YWCA's Putnam School provided a formal place to learn.
During the Great Depression, the Putnam class made all of its classes free. They really wanted young women who were unemployed to be able to find work. The YWCA created an unemployment bureau to kind of connect young women to job opportunities. They provided work counseling, placement counseling to about 1,000 young women who were unemployed in the city.
From its founding, empowering women has been at the core of who we are. During the 1940s, the YWCA expanded its advocacy work to include more women. Pursuing justice for all, the YWCA spoke out against Japanese internment camps and challenged racism. Our board of directors was strengthened by our first African American members and president, Mrs. Helen Clater.
Mother was very intelligent, very professional, very well-educated and well-spoken, and also very charming. She started serving on the board when she came here. She was already associated, she was already connected to the YWCA, and there was backlash. There were people who threatened to leave the board and some who did, I believe.
I think so.
But that didn't stop Mom, and fortunately didn't stop the Grand Rapids YWCA.
Mrs. Clater's extraordinary leadership and advocacy of women's rights, civil rights, and human rights left a permanent, powerful mark on our city and organization.
I'm currently serving as the board president for YWCA, and it's a true honor for me. There have been so many trailblazing women ahead of me: Helen Clater, Deb Bailey, so many women who have believed in the mission, and for me, that's what it's all about.
The YWCA grew as a leader in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Fighting racism and sexism became central to our work in this decade, both through undertaking an internal review process to study institutional racism and championing women's rights. These values have remained at the core of our mission ever since.
There was a woman by the name of Jean McKee who kind of recruited me and started pushing me out to different organizations. And so when I got involved with the Y, I would talk about things that needed to change and how we should be doing things more in the minority community.
YWCAs were segregated, and there was a move on with particularly Black women who wanted change. We became involved in that process, and so for a year, we did training.
In the 1970s, the YWCA addressed some of the era's most pressing issues, fighting racism and speaking out on gun control. At the 1970 National Conference, the One Imperative Initiative was adopted as a call to all YWCAs to thrust our collective power toward the elimination of racism wherever it exists and by any means necessary.
All through my life, they talk of Mother kind of like a rock star. Mother was very able to run meetings, to keep things moving, and all of them acknowledged that they wouldn't have been able to bring the One Imperative to a vote if Mother had not been presiding over that convention.
We knew that Helen was the president for everybody, not just Black people, but when the One Imperative was read, she got up and stood up, and that said to me, "We are on it now. I know we're going to get it," because Helen done stood up, and she wouldn't be standing with. And so when they took the vote, of course, it passed. We were happy. We getting on phones, people calling, saying that their One Imperative had passed.
It was threatening to some women. Some women walked away that day, but I'm just pleased to say we did win that fight, if you will. It affected a lot of YWCAs. But it certainly said to us that the YWCA was ready to deal, that they wanted to make some changes in the organization.
This marked the first time the elimination of racism appeared in the YWCA mission, and it has not departed since. Led by the knowledge that racism and sexism give rise to domestic and sexual violence, our program areas expanded in the 1980s to include an emergency shelter and child sexual abuse treatment center.
The services that are offered in the residential services include Sojourner House, the emergency shelter, which used to be called the Domestic Crisis Center. And back when that first originally began, we were able to provide a safe space for women and children who were fleeing domestic violence. Now today we are able to serve all who are fleeing intimate partner violence, and that includes their pets.
One of the unique elements of our perspective is trying to understand domestic violence and sexual assault in the broadest possible context. For a long time, have been running domestic violence groups for men who've been abusive. To an extent, that's a unique perspective to have, that we're focused on providing as much support and healing for survivors as possible, but also just as focused on trying to teach people who have been abusive to not be abusive.
With these programs, we became better positioned to meet the needs of people affected by these forms of violence in our community.
In our Project Heal program, when it first began in 1997, we had 10 transitional housing apartments. Now today we serve over 70 apartments, and we also have 6 permanent housing units.
Our programming grew again in the 90s to seek justice for survivors of sexual abuse in ways that hadn't yet existed in our community. We launched the first freestanding nurse examiner program in Michigan, and other organizations have since looked to the YWCA as a model for this important type of care.
The nurse examiner program is staffed by nurses who have received specialized training to care for patients who have been sexually assaulted or have experienced intimate partner violence. Prior to the nurse examiner program, people would go to the hospital. So the nurse examiner program is private, it's trauma-informed, it's patient-driven. Our exams are based on empowerment.
This was an incredible partnership. There were the hospitals in Grand Rapids, which at that point were St. Mary's, Butterworth Blodgett, and Metro. There were members of law enforcement community, and there was the prosecutor's office. And everyone came to the table and worked together, which was fantastic.
For many years, we cared for adolescent and adult patients of sexual assault, but during that time, frequently we would be asked to take care of younger patients, 10, 9, 8, even younger patients. Those children were being seen at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. For a period of time, they had a 24-hour team of physicians that would be on call to care for those children, but when the funding stopped, there were really limited resources. So it was at that time that we really decided to expand our program to include children, which would mean a lot more training for the nurses.
We wanted to work to save other programs. Our nurses conducted research. We have been seen in the state of Michigan as a trailblazer, and that again is something that we can feel really proud about.
The early 2000s involved programming and advocacy for LGBTQ+ community and reproductive rights. Each of our program areas, the Nurse Examiner Program, Advocacy and Resource Services, Counseling, Safe Connections, and the Shelter and Transitional Housing, continue to pursue justice in powerful ways.
Hi, I'm Deb O'Leary, and I'm so proud to be the new CEO of the YWCA. For 125 years, this organization has empowered women and created a space where dignity isn't conditional and safety isn't a privilege, but a right. The YWCA has always centered around women, but also those whose voices have too often been ignored. We know that you can't empower women without addressing racism and the many systems that fuel injustice. This work is about confronting the systems that harm marginalized communities. It is about acknowledging where we've come from and what needs to be done to help shift where we're going. Whether it's emergency shelter for someone escaping violence, crisis advocacy in a moment of fear, forensic exams for survivors of sexual or domestic abuse, or ongoing counseling to begin the healing process, we are here. Because everyone deserves safety, everyone deserves support, and in the face of injustice, we remain unshaken. We are unbreakable, and we will keep showing up because this is who we are.